Hello and welcome to the channel. In this video, we will create a camp animation together. You will also learn how to create a realistic campfire effect step by step without using any plugins, using only the built-in tools. If you want to create an impressive camp scene that you can use in your animation projects, you're in the right place. If you enjoy this type of content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. This way, you can stay updated with new tutorial videos. If you're ready, let's get started. Double-click on the Project panel to import the Illustrator file. In the window that appears, adjust the settings the same way I did. Setting these options correctly is important to make sure the file imports into the scene without any issues. Double-click on the composition to open it. First, let's add some motion to the background to make the scene feel more alive. First, select the tree layer and press R on the keyboard to open the rotation settings. The most important thing here is to set the anchor point correctly. To make the tree swing naturally, we place the anchor point at the bottom of the tree layer. Add a keyframe to the rotation property and set the value to 2. Then, move to the second on the timeline and change the rotation value to -2. After that, select all the keyframes and apply Easy Ease. To make the tree swing continuously, hold the Alt key on the keyboard and click on the keyframe. In the Expressions field that appears, type Loop Out Ping Pong. Now, copy the rotation settings. Next, select all the other tree layers and adjust their anchor point positions properly. Then, paste the rotation settings we copied earlier onto the other tree layers. This way, we apply the swaying animation to all the trees in the scene. The only issue here is that all the trees are swaying at the same time. Let's fix that. Select all the tree layers and press U on the keyboard to reveal all active keyframes. Then, select all the keyframes and offset them by 2 frames each, moving them to the start of the timeline. This way, all the trees will sway at different times, making the animation look more natural. Great. Now let's add a swinging animation to the camp pot above the fire. First, move the anchor point of the hanger to the top of the pot. Then, connect the hanger of the camp pot to the pot using the parent link. Finally, paste the rotation settings we copied earlier onto the camp pot. This will make the pot swing naturally above the fire. Now let's add a glow effect to the stars in the sky. First, select the star layer. Then, from the Effects and Presets panel, apply the glow effect to the star layer. Finally, adjust the glow settings until you find the most suitable brightness for the scene. Great. Now let's create the shooting stars in the background. First, select the pen tool and draw a straight line. Make sure that the fill is disabled and the stroke is enabled. Next, open the Shape Layer settings and go to the Stroke section. Here, change the Line Cap option to Round Cap. This will make the ends of the stroke rounded. Now open the Taper section and set the end length value to 100. Now let's apply the glow effect to the shape layer to create a glow effect. Then adjust the glow settings until you find the most suitable glow intensity for the scene. Great! Now let's create the sliding animation. Press P on the keyboard to open the Position property and add a keyframe. Then move 3 seconds forward on the timeline and drag the star outside the bottom of the scene to create the sliding motion. After that, return to the first frame and move the star outside the top of the scene. This creates the shooting animation for the star. Now duplicate the star layer and move the copies to different positions. Then offset each star by a few frames on the timeline. This way, the stars will enter the scene at different times, creating a more natural and visually pleasing animation. Now select all the star layers and move them to the bottom of the layer stack. Here we encounter a small issue. The stars appear above the camp scene. To fix this, we need to slightly adjust the position of the star layers. Once we adjust their position, the problem will be solved and the stars will appear correctly in the scene. Great, everything looks good so far. Now let's create the fire. First, create a solid layer and rename it Fire. Then, go to the Effects and Presets panel and apply the CC Mr. Mercury effect to the solid layer. Now let's adjust the CC Mr. Mercury effect settings. First, set the animation option to Fire. Next, set Radius X to 10. Set Radius Y to 0. Then set Velocity to 0 and change the birth rate value to 2. Set Resistance to 0.20 and Extra to 0.5. After that, set Blob Birth Size to 0.25 and Blob Death Size to 0.03. Finally, adjust the position of the fire in the scene. Now let's adjust the color of the fire layer. From the Effects and Presets panel, apply the Fill effect to the fire solid layer. Then, in the Color section, set the fire's color. I have already prepared the color codes, and you can use the same codes. Now, let's apply the Fast Box Blur effect to the fire layer. Set the blur radius to 3 or 5, depending on which looks best in your scene. Next, apply the Simple Choker effect. Set the choke matte value to 15. This completes the basic fire, but we still have a few more steps to finalize it. Great. Now let's duplicate the fire layer. Change the color of the fire in the Color section. Adjust the CC Mr. Mercury settings. Set Radius X to 8. Set Ligavity to 1.5. Set Resistance to 0.02. This way, we have created the second part of the fire. Now, let's duplicate the fire layer again. Change the fire color again in the Color section. Next, go to the CC Mr. Mercury settings. Set Radius X to 5. Set Birth Rate to 1.5. Set Longevity to 1.2. This way, we have created the third part of the fire. Now, select all the fire layers and pre-compose them. Name the new composition Fire Comp. Next, adjust the anchor point of the fire so that it is positioned at the bottom. Press S on the keyboard to open the Scale property and randomly scale down the fire. The reason for scaling it randomly is so that we can later resize it to fit the scene properly. Now, since the fire is small in the scene, I'm increasing its scale slightly and adjusting its position. Next, let's add a glow effect to the fire layer. From the Effects and Presets panel, apply the glow effect to the fire layer. Adjust the settings as follows. Set glow threshold to 80. Set glow radius to 110. Finally, set glow intensity to 2. This adds a glow effect to the fire layer, making it more visually appealing in the scene. Now select the fire layer and move it behind the camp pot. There is a small issue here. At the beginning of the scene, the fire starts forming from 0, which is not what we want. To fix this, drag the fire layer back on the timeline until the point where the fire is fully formed. This way, when the scene starts, the fire will already be burning. Now let's duplicate the fire layer. Move the duplicated layer above the camp pot. Here we encounter a small issue. The fire still appears above the layers. To fix this, select the Pin tool and create a mask on the fire layer. Press M on the keyboard to open the mask settings and enable the invert option. Finally, drag the fire layer slightly toward the beginning of the timeline. This way, the front and back fire layers will move differently, making the animation look more natural. Now let's create the sparks that appear while the fire is burning. First, double-click the top fire layer to open it. Then, go to the Layer menu and create a new solid layer and rename it CC Bubbles. Next, from the Effects and Presets panel, apply the CC Bubbles effect to the solid layer. Now let's adjust the effects settings. Set shading type to darken. Set bubble amount to 120. Set bubble speed to 10. Set bubble size to 1. Now, from the Effects and Presets panel, apply the Fill effect and adjust the color of the sparks. Next, resize the layer by dragging its edges, narrowing it from the sides and the top so that it fits the fire layer. This way, we create the sparks that appear while the fire is burning. Now let's return to the main composition. Great, everything looks good so far. Now let's create the smoke coming from the fire. First, go to the Layer menu and create a new solid layer and rename it Smoke. Then, from the Effects and Presets panel, find the Particle Playground effect and apply it to the solid layer. Now open the Cannon section and position the particle source above the fire. Then, in the Color section, set the particle color to white. Now let's adjust the important settings. Set barrel radius to -50, set particles per second to 350, set velocity to 400. Next, open the Gravity section and set the force value to 8. Now, to make the smoke look more natural and wavy, we'll add an expression. Hold the Alt key and click on the Direction property. In the Expressions field that appears, type wiggle, open parenthesis, 4,35, close parenthesis. This will make the particles move upward with a wavy motion. Now, from the Effects and Presets panel, apply the Fast Box Blur effect to the smoke layer. Set the blur radius value to 35. Next, duplicate the smoke layer to create a copy. Rename the new layer Smoke 1. Finally, place this layer below the other smoke layer. Now, while the Smoke 1 layer is selected, let's adjust a few settings. First, set the barrel radius value to -60. Then, change the blur radius value to 40. Next, press U on the keyboard to reveal the Expressions panel, and change the expression value to 37. Great, everything looks good so far. Now duplicate the Smoke 1 layer again and move the copy to the top of the layer stack. Next, let's adjust a few settings again. First, set the barrel radius value to -35. Then change the blur radius value to 20. Finally, press U on the keyboard to reveal the expression settings and change the expression value to 32. Great, now we have also created the smoke effect. Next, select all the smoke layers and move them below the fire layers. There is one small issue here. At the beginning of the scene, the smoke starts forming from 0. To fix this, move all the smoke layers slightly to the left on the timeline. This way, the problem is resolved. Now, let's adjust the fire reflection layer. First, let's soften the sharp edges of the layer. To do this, apply the Fast Box Blur effect from the Effects and Presets panel to the layer. Change the Blur Dimensions setting to horizontal and increase the blur radius value. Next, let's fix the sharp line issue on the layer. Enable the wheel icon in front of the layer. This resolves the problem. Now, with the fire reflection layer selected, press T on the keyboard to open the opacity property. Next, hold the Alt key and click once on the opacity keyframe. In the expressions field that appears, type wiggle 1525. This applies a flickering effect to the opacity, making the fire reflection realistically flicker along with the flames. Great, now let's add a final movement to our scene. First, go to the Layer menu and create a new null object. Then, select all layers and parent them to the null object. With the null object selected, press S on the keyboard to open the Scale property. Add a keyframe at the first frame, then move to 6 seconds on the timeline and set the scale value to 110. Finally, select the keyframe and apply Easy Ease In. This creates a zoom-in movement in the scene, making the animation more dynamic. Finally, let's add a slight shaking movement to the scene. Press P on the keyboard to open the Position property. Then, hold the Alt key and click on the Position keyframe icon. In the Expressions field that appears, type wiggle, open parenthesis, 1, 5, close parenthesis. This adds a gentle shaking motion to the scene, making the animation look more natural. And that brings us to the end of our animation. I hope this tutorial was helpful and that you've learned how to create a realistic camp scene and fire animation with me. You can apply the techniques you learned here to your own projects. Remember, the more you practice, the faster you'll get and the more vivid and impressive your scenes will become. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. This way, you'll be the first to know when new tutorials are released. You can also support us by liking the video and leaving a comment, sharing your questions or experiences. In the next video, we'll bring you more tips, tricks, and creative animation techniques. Until then, keep practicing, have fun, and stay creative. Thank you, and happy animating!